With that, let's go ahead and get into our underdog token. And I've got to be honest, I don't know what to think of this token. And when I say I don't know what to think of this token, it's because the way that they outreached and the way that they did it, but then when I look at it, I understand and I suspect that they're on the up and up. I suspect that it's clean, but if I were able to talk to them, and I did reach out to them, haven't heard anything back. If I were able to talk to them, I suspect they would tell me that they did it on purpose and there's a reason why, and I'm sure there's a logic and everything else, but I would have told them they made a critical mistake, and I think it harmed their chances for long-term success. However, if they want the smoke and they come on the show, I would love to talk to them because I do think that there's something here. And if they are serious, then I can help them. I think I can help them. And of course, I'll do a scorecard on this one. It came to my attention, just so you're aware, via an airdrop. They dropped, I want to say, just shy of 1 million tokens randomly to the wallet. And I happened to notice it simply because SafePal wallet does show you a lot of the tokens that you wouldn't otherwise see. This is on the Binance Smart Chain, and its name seems to have changed, or there's an inconsistency of the name, which I think is contributing to some of its price movement, believe it or not. But the way that it appears in Trust Wallet is called Crypto Inu. The way it appears in SafePal is ABCD. The way it appears on certain sites is ABC Doge. So I'm not fully sure which is the right name. I suspect the Crypto Inu is the correct name. It looks like ABCD is its call sign or its ticker, quote unquote. And then I believe ABC Doge might have been an old name, perhaps, that they changed and it hasn't promulgated across. But again, it's on the Binance Smart Chain. They refer to 3D and VR for gaming and metaverse real estate. It's on MEXC as far as an exchange. They have a 2% reflection for every transaction. They burned a small amount. They say it's 0.96 to holders. I don't know if that's the initial airdrop that they did, because if what they're saying is I got 1% of the total supply, that means that they would have had to, just by math, that means they only could have dropped to 100 people, right? But I know they didn't drop to 100 people because it looks like they have over 200 holders according to their roadmap. So I don't think, based on the phases, that it was mathematically possible, because they have the 200,000 holders right at the very front, like right after launch. So I think that 1%, I'm not sure where they got that number from because it doesn't make sense. If you only dropped 1%, and I'm assuming it's the airdrop, so if that assumption is wrong, I'd love the clarification. If you only dropped 1%, that means you only could have had 100 drops, but you ended up with 200,000 holders. So chances are it's not 1%. That doesn't make any sense. That means you would have dropped 0.5%, right? Because 0.5%, that would make sense. Then you could get to 200%. That would make sense. But then you got 200,000 holders. So that means you had to drop like less tokens to more people. The math doesn't make sense. So let's figure that out. I don't think it's a major thing, but when we say there's 200 holders, as was the case with Anticinu, we kind of have to put it in perspective. What do you mean? How did that come about? What did that entail? That's not detailed on the site. There's nothing wrong with the site overall. It's a very decently done site. I just think that some of the information is not clear. And because they did it as an airdrop, as we've talked about before, there are people who take the airdrop and they assume it's a scam straight out of the gate because there have been airdrop scams. So what I'm saying is, if this org wants to be treated credible, and I'll get to this in a second, I think they need to really elaborate what they mean. What did they do? Let's talk about it. We know the airdrop tokens. What was that percentage? Why? How did you choose them? How did you choose the amount? Let's talk about it so we can understand it a little bit better. And then the number of tokens that I received did seem a little bit on the steep side based on how much I would assume is in the total supply. Because again, I got 1 million of them, and that seems kind of high. Later down on the page, they talked about liquidity, and they said they sent 48% to PancakeSwap and 52% to a burnt address. Again, mathematically, we need to understand, what does that mean? So where did all this, I guess what I'm getting at is, where did all this money come from, right? Where did they get the upfront capital to do what they did? And it's entirely possible that this is self-funded. It's entirely possible that they took some loan out or something else to build this. And then the distributions that they did were just to kind of drum up awareness of the project. The total supply I see right now is 100 trillion tokens. So if you go back to my SHIB episode, you know that's quite a bit of drops that they could have done to get to its holder count 200,000. And it looks like from PooCoin that quite a bit of people were just basically dumped it. And I suspect that people dumping it was a symptom of the fact that there was no real education about what this was. And I think, this is all theory, I think that they made the faulty assumption that people in Telescam would have spread the word for them and would have, quote, shilled it in all the other places to drum up that interest and keep it high. Because if you look at its graph over time, the bad thing I see is it looks almost perfectly identical to SAITAMA's graph. And we all know SAITAMA's graph looks like crap. And SAITAMA, that team actively made it look like crap. Whereas here, they didn't do anything anywhere near what SAITAMA did, and yet their graph looks perfectly identical to what SAITAMA had going on. It had the initial pump and drove up the price, got way down to like 6 zeros, it looks like, and then dumped. There's a bunch of dumps over time. The dumps continue, they're large-scale dumps, and it looks to me, and I could have this wrong, it looks to me like it's not whale dumps, like with SAITAMA. It looks like it's just people dumping out of the project. So it's possible, this looks like this project's been around since beginning of February, late January. It's possible that what they did was this airdrop to try to reignite interest in the project, that at some point they saw that people were dwindling out of it and people were dumping out, and they were trying to do some last ditch desperate attempt to get people's interest back in the project, as opposed to like Antis that did the holders just to get on the exchange. This might have just been, you know what, look, we got more holders, we got more holders, we got more holders, guys, we're successful, and helped spike the graph. If they were to talk to me, I could have told them that wasn't going to work. Here's why. It's already an established token. Being an established token means you already have what you need. You already have a community that you're building and have built up. If we look at something like Volt.enu, Volt.enu has a very vociferous, very loyal community behind it. Despite the fact that I think its supply is garbage, it's way too darn high, they have a strong community that is backing their support and their long-term stability. This one has the community, but it doesn't have the support. How can that possibly be? With a constrained inventory, we're only talking 100 trillion. That's not a lot. If you listen to me, I said, I think 100 trillion is like the perfect number for supply, but that assumes a couple of things. It assumes that you got the right marketing strategy, not only to get initial interest, not only to keep people interested, but also to drive new business. What I see is that they don't have the solid marketing plan around how to drive new business. I don't think it's a matter of the existing. I think from the graph, it looks like people are just tired of waiting. That's what it looks like to me. They're expecting more growth than they're getting, and they're just selling out because they're sick of it. So that's number one. Number two, their imagery, their logo, I don't think that it supports any sort of serious investor sentiment from my perspective. It does not strike anything to me that I would want to do. Like if I were to do this logo, I would do like a dog coin, like an actual coin, but I'd make it look serious. I wouldn't make it look like it looks like a cartoonish dog. And I don't think it looks scammy, I guess is what I'm saying. It looks like something that's a scam. And I think that might be playing into it. I'm speculating. I have no way of knowing. I looked at the white paper. I had no concerns with the white paper. It could have a little bit more. It was lacking a little bit, but I was generally okay with it. It's PDF. They did a great job there. Just, I think there's a little bit more that they could have done. Again, it's on MEXC, so that's good. The 2% reflections is good. I find that interesting that it has 2% reflections with a 100 trillion inventory, but yet the graph is still going down. And if you look at the graph, you can see that there are points where there's kind of an attempt to try to pump the price and it doesn't work. So despite the reflections, it's not really doing any good to help keep the value up. As of right now, its market cap is down roughly around $300,000. Liquidity pulls down to close to about $50,000. I wouldn't say it's in an unhealthy state, but I would say it's teetering on precarious. It's not where you'd really want it to be for something like this with 100 trillion supply. That much market cap means that basically the tokens are worthless. I suspect, this is my theory, that the airdrop that they did might have made this worse. And you're like, why? Because what happens is if you're just dumping tokens out to different people, those tokens are still in circulation while you're dumping them. And then as people sell them, they're going back in circulation. So it's like a artificial inflation situation when you do it this far after the launch. I can't tell exactly when they would have sent these to me, but I'm pretty sure they would have sent it after launch because I'm pretty sure I didn't have them anytime in February. So if that's true and they sent them in March, well, geez, it's already been out for close to 2 months now. So why are we just now dropping tokens? I think it was the wrong answer. If you were going to do an airdrop, I think it should have been tied around some sort of call to action, by which I'm saying maybe you have some sort of an event where for every purchase that you do of $100 worth of these tokens, and based on the current price, that's probably too low, but I'm saying every purchase you do for $100 worth of tokens will airdrop you an equivalent $100 worth of tokens or something. Some sort of call to action for people. And maybe it's a one-time thing that you can claim so that you don't abuse it, but something to where you're required to do something that helps the project. And then you tie the airdrop to that. I think that might've played a little bit better. Other than that, I looked at everything they described about the project, using digital tokens for the game, staking and earning rewards, virtual real estate, metaverse, NFTs. They're KYC by Solid Proof. I don't rate Solid Proof, but it's better than not having one. It's audited by that same Solid Proof. If you heard me before, I said I like the audit to be a different firm, just to be separation of duty. Locked liquidity, renounced ownership of the contract. I believe if they've already renounced the ownership, I think that's a problem. Here's why. If you heard me on Paratoken, they renounced the ownership too darn soon. And so the tokenomics started to not work. And so as a result, they weren't able to make the changes that they needed to make, and they had to migrate to a new contract. Something like that might need to happen here, especially given what we're seeing with the price movement and the apparent decline in popularity, is they'd have to do a migration and a relaunch to a new contract. I don't know why that would be. I don't know why this made any sense. Now, the other thing I noticed is when I look at the token, it looks like you're not able to sell. So I don't know if that's by design or it's something with the interface where, because I am seeing sells, but the interface tells me I can't sell. I'm not trying to, but I always test that, right? I always say, can you sell for profit? Because if I could sell for profit, then no problem. It just sit there and I'll either get rich or I won't. But in this case, it says I couldn't sell, and I wasn't sure what that exactly meant or if there was a problem. If they renounced the ownership, they wouldn't have been able to lock it down. So that's an open question I would ask on this. What really caught my eye, though, is for the purposes of communication, they have faces. I'll say faces and put it in quotes because they're cartoony, but they have faces, they have names. In a couple of cases, they got LinkedIn profiles for the people behind the project, and they also have an email address directly to contact them, and it doesn't look like they're relying heavily on Telescam. So that's huge for me. The ability to reach them directly without relying on Telescam is huge. And I'll give my summary thoughts as such. I suspect that this is a legitimate project. I suspect that these guys have the best intention. I suspect that this was kind of a last-ditch effort to try to get people's interest back on the project. I suspect that it's a project that could succeed. I suspect that under the current way that it's built, it's going to be very difficult, especially after the airdrop. I've reached out to them. I sent them an email. Hopefully they respond because I'd love to talk to them, because I think if I can talk to them and actually have them on the show and help them distribute the message to people, I think it might help, because right now I see it as a really good project. From what I can tell, I don't see anything wrong fundamentally. It's just the way they went around it. Again, marketing and getting the word out and the communication, and not only getting interest, but keeping interest in the project. It's almost like ID finance, right? It's like they have what looks like a good project, but they're just not able to get it over that hurdle. And if they do get it over, they're not able to keep it that way. This one also might be affected by just sentiment, general sentiment. There's a loss of sentiment in ENU tokens. We see this, it's tangible. Again, Volt is an exception because Volt has a very vociferous, very loyal community behind it that's rare these days. You don't see that very often. But as far as tokenomics, I think it's fine. I think the emu harms it. I believe that the logo harms it, believe it or not. I think the airdrop harmed it. I think the way that the communication is being done might be harming it. I think this is one that really should be more successful than it is, to be honest, because, again, I think it has the perfect supply, and I think the tokenomics are good. I don't see any concerns from the site necessarily, and there's nothing that would scream risk like with nothing that screams at me. It just seems like they lack the right messaging to the right people. So if they're listening, I'll add them on social media. If they're listening and you want the smoke, I'd love to have you on the show to talk it through, because I believe I can help. Because it seems, and perhaps I'm oversimplifying it, but it seems like there's some easy ways to get more interest in this one, because I struggle to understand why it would be on the decline as it is, other than just the way that the outreach has been done, and possibly that airdrop that was done may not have helped matters. It may have actually hurt more than it helped.